Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to episode number 91 of Paul Heyman's TNA, and this is the fallout show to one of the biggest events that we've ran so far, albeit not one of the best ratings. I'll put on screen now the Slammiversary 9 results. You may also notice that I'm using a new skin for this video. I like to generally, after a big show, change it up just to give a bit of a fresh look and keep me from getting bored basically. So if there's any problems with this skin, I don't see why there would be because I think it looks really great, but if there's any reason people don't like it, I'll look to move on to something else. But I'll also put a link to this in the description because I'm a big fan of this skin in the limited time that I've used it. But with that out of the way, let's get into this first Impact after Slammiversary, and we begin with the World Heavyweight Champion. In this case, he has to talk about something else. He wants to go out and discuss that he had another successful defense, that he's now 16 defenses into his title reign, but he knows there's an elephant in the room. Before anything else, he wants to invite Bryan Danielson to the ring. The American Dragon comes out, but as he walks towards the ring, he is jumped from behind by Bobby Lashley. The furious Lashley throws the man who made him tap out at Slammiversary just 10 minutes into that main event. He throws him into the guardrail before lifting him up and dropping him ribs first onto the guardrail once again. We remember that spear at Slammiversary that Lashley hit Bryan with after he was eliminated. So compounding the damage suffered by Bryan, he then lifts him up again, looking to slam him into the ramp when Kurt Angle leaves the ring, or he already would have, but obviously this is all happening very, very quickly. Kurt then tries to stop Lashley, but Lashley is blaming Bryan for him not being the champion. This whole storyline has been about him wanting that one-on-one with Kurt Angle, and he points the finger at Bryan Danielson for that not happening. Of course, he's not willing to take any of the responsibility for the fact that he tapped out in the middle of the ring at Slammiversary. He goes ahead and slams Danielson onto the steel ramp. Security then eventually come out to remove Lashley from the scene once again. They had to do that at Slammiversary. They had to do that the other week. Lashley is out of control at the minute. He continues to shout about the situation. Medics checking on Bryan Danielson, with Kurt Angle also showing concern. So what started as Kurt Angle probably wanting to come out and address the fact that Bryan Danielson took him so close turned into Lashley, who I'd kind of suggested that Slammiversary was his last night. But as you can see, we're recording this on the Monday, and I did that so that we had Lashley for one last night before he leaves. We then look to clear up from the explosive starts of the show with Mauro and Taz welcoming viewers to Impact. They put over the incredible success of Slammiversary, with the fallout to that show already being evident with how we opened this week's episode. The commentators put over the controversial World Heavyweight Championship match. It was just one of many talking points, however, each of which we will cover on tonight's show. They inform viewers that Bryan Danielson has now been helped to the back, and there's going to be an immediate follow-up to this incident in the office of Paul Heyman. We then see Heyman, Anderson and Morgan in the office, with Bobby Lashley being escorted in by security. While Lashley is furious, Anderson and Morgan tell him that they can leave it with them. We don't need security. They're more than enough to handle him. Lashley is straight to the point, demanding a one-on-one match with Kurt Angle, and he wants it tonight. The first Impact of 2011, he was owed that one-on-one match. He got screwed by the New Age, and he wants that match now. He was robbed of his opportunity by Bryan Danielson at Slammiversary, a man who had no business being in that match, and Heyman better fix it right now. Paul tells him to forget about a title shot tonight. He's lucky that he's not been suspended. He's lucky he even made it to Slammiversary with the way he's been behaving. Lashley dares him to, but then we see Bryan Danielson holding his ribs, hobbling to the office before Heyman can make any decision. Danielson says he doesn't care what is planned, he wants Lashley tonight. Paul Heyman immediately questions whether he'll be fit to compete. It certainly didn't look like it with how he was left on the ramp earlier, but Bryan Danielson says either the match gets made for tonight or the fight begins right now. They destroy this office and keep fighting until one of them is down for good. Anderson and Morgan move to ensure that doesn't happen, but Heyman, understanding that this is a very volatile situation, he agrees to make the match. He does however insist that Bryan gets himself checked out before then. He adds, whoever wins tonight's match will earn a shot at Kurt Angle at Victory Road. So in a sense, backing down to Bobby Lashley's demands there, but at least he will have to earn it against a man with a very, very good shout towards the championship. And this is Heyman realising what a huge situation this is, just trying his best to calm things down here. Gaining heat to the World Heavyweight Championship storyline is good to see. And while Morgan apparently looked dreadful in this segment, everybody else did well, and that's a lot of green notes. Very happy with how this show has started. we can finally, after all that controversy, get into the first match of the night, and it is El Generico defeating Paul London. This has been a bit of an ongoing storyline on Evolve and on Impact. Paul London basically dominating El Generico, bullying him and victimising him. Well, tonight, feeling the effects of that King of the Mountain ladder match at Slammiversary, Paul London, maybe a little bit away from 100%, tries to target the knee and leg of El Generico, but that doesn't stop him from being able to hit the haluva kick and pick up the 1-2-3. The biggest singles victory of his TNA run so far. A 52 is a decent performance, but we've got to keep building this guy up, and it's a solid opening match rating. Colt Cabana joins Generico in the ring, celebrating what is billed as a big upset. Paul London very established on the roster, before we go to footage from earlier today showing AJ Styles arriving at the building. He gets out of his car immediately to be approached by TNA cameras. Styles asks if Austin Aries and Steve Corino have arrived yet. When he's told that they haven't, he asks that the crew let him know as soon as they do, because he's got something to show them. With a smirk on his face, AJ opens the back door of his car and pulls out the Ring of Honor World Championship, the title that he won from Austin Aries on the previous show. He places it over his shoulder and enters the building carrying Ring of Honor's top title. We know how heated the situation between Ring of Honor and TNA is, and seeing that image is only going to rile Ring of Honor guys up even more. Tara then defeats Santana Garrett in 2 minutes and 15 seconds with a Widow's Peak. We put over that on the pre-show of Slammiversary, Tara outlasted 9 other knockouts to win a Battle Royal, but she's not in a good mood tonight, and we suggest, is this due to the fact that in another Knockouts match on Slammiversary, Mickie James became the Knockouts champion, something that Tara tried to stop her from getting, and now she's got what she wanted. It's a poor match, but it is just a squash for Tara. She puts in a decent 53, and hopefully continuing to give her these strong victories will go some way to rebuilding her after she was decisively defeated in that rivalry with Mickie James. And despite getting her arm raised, Tara remains in a bad mood. The commentator's putting over her second victory in the space of a few days, and they just go over what we previously said, adding insult to injury. The referee sort of shuffles over and speaks into the ear of Tara, appearing to usher her away from the ring. Mara puts over the fact that Mickie James is set to appear next, her first appearance as the TNA Knockouts champion, and while we don't explicitly state it, the idea there is that Tara's being pushed out of the way so that we can get that Mickie James promo in. So again, adding fuel to the fire that Tara is very, very bitter about her situation currently. Mickie James then comes out to celebrate the win and thanks the fans for having her back from the day she walked into the company. She says that coming to TNA and receiving the reception she did helped her rebuild her confidence and shows that she has even more to give to pro wrestling, and she's proud to do it inside the six-sided ring. Again, playing on the fact that Mickie's departure from WWE left her at a pretty low ebb. She was disrespected in many people's eyes, and we've really built her back up in the last 9 months. We don't explicitly state that because I don't want to take unnecessary shots at other companies, but that's the point she's making in terms of how she's developed since coming to TNA. It's more saying how good TNA has been for her rather than how bad something else was for her. Her way of paying the fans back is to be the best champion that she can be, and that includes fighting whenever, wherever, and whoever with this title on the line. Speaking of which, she puts over the greatest Knockouts champion in history. She doesn't like the woman, but she cannot deny that. In addition, Mickie says that she has the intention of surpassing that record-breaking reign, and if anyone can do it, you'd have to feel that Mickie is one capable of that. Out from the back, Alyssa Flash points out that Sara Del Rey isn't here tonight, and she knows that this is Mickie's moment, but she just wants to remind the champion that when Flash got her title shot, she was screwed by the New Age, and that was just a month before Mickie won it, so Flash maybe thinks that she's still in line. She had a big moment of her own at Slammiversary defeating Mischief. She's putting that behind her, and now she wants a title shot, a fair one-on-one, unlike at Sacrifice. Mickie says that she is committed still to being a fighting champion, but since Alyssa Flash is already in action tonight, they'd better talk with Paul Heyman about it and see what they can come up with. So not a no from Mickie James, but we'll see what comes of that later on in the show. We then get an interview with Jimmy Jacobs, Jeremy Borash asking the leader of the New Age why he requested this time to speak following the events of Slammiversary. Jacobs is just there to hype a major announcement later tonight, and he says it will change the course of professional wrestling forever. The landscape changes tonight. JB asks if this is related to his meeting with Steve Corino at Slammiversary, but Jacobs tells him he'll find out the exact moment that everybody else does. He's annoyed at Jeremy Borash for trying to pry and get an exclusive, and walks off the set. We then go into the third match of the night. Two men who were in the Evolve Championship match at Slammiversary but were not able to win the championship. Desmond Wolfe, our first Evolve champion, in case anybody missed it. Wolfe will defend the title this Saturday against Jay Lethal, but next week on Evolve, he will face the winner of this match. And it's the usual tactics from Kevin Steen. He tries to get the referee's attention diverted so he can hit a low blow. Roderick Strong is ready for this though, blocks it, hits a low blow of his own, and then a sick kick to Kevin Steen to secure the victory. So it's not a clean loss for Kevin Steen, but it is the idea of him getting a taste of his own medicine. Strong showing a bit more cunning. He's been fairly straight-laced throughout his TNA run, but this shows that he is willing to do what it takes to get the match won. A 65 is good from him, a 63 is solid from Kevin Steen, and a 69 overall I'm happy with, and it will be Roderick Strong facing Desmond Wolfe or Jay Lethal next week on Evolve. Of course, that's also promoting the main event of this week's show. Having used his tactics against him, Strong celebrates a big win to end the first hour. We come back to the second hour, and it's the New Age, led by Jimmy Jacobs, and he admits that overall, Slammiversary was a bad night for them. He looks to the Kings of Wrestling, who are now without gold, and that's pretty much all the evidence you need. But their project isn't about looking back, it's about looking forward, and they are always one step ahead of everybody else. Their next move is no different. He says that he had to open his mind to new ideas. They knew that something wasn't right after the events of Slammiversary, so he reached out his hand. You could call it a collaboration. He prefers to call it an alliance. Out from the back, Steve Corino leads Austin Aries, also sands his championship, and the Wolves down to the ring. The two groups go face to face. Of course, the parallels between the Wolves and the Kings, Aries and Black, Jacobs and Corino, before Corino extends a hand to Jimmy Jacobs, the handshake that seals this deal, as Corino speaks about how a war has been inevitable since they arrived in TNA. Ring of Honor and the New Age may have different endgames, they may have different methodologies, but right now they are better together. Putting TNA on notice, Jimmy Jacobs says that he's had a great chat with the ROH backer, and he sees that they align in many ways, so he welcomes Impact to the New Age of Honor, a supergroup coming from these two separate stables. They've run side by side. There has been some overlap, two dominant groups trying to change the company, so I felt like, and just to give even more gravitas to this Ring of Honor invasion angle, we've now brought these two teams together, and of course all 8 men in this ring right now have history with Ring of Honor. A decent segment, Corino doing well, improvising, and I'm happy with that. We then go into the fourth match of the night. It was written down to be the Kings of Wrestling versus Creed and Dutt. However, Steve Corino joins commentary for this match and explains why it has been changed. This is the ceremonial coming together of these two groups, and who better to display that than Austin Aries and the X Division champion Tyler Black, showing that they can work together here as Aries and Black defeat Creed and Dutt in 10 minutes 12 when Aries pins Austin Creed with a brainbuster. Corino sort of elbowing in there to show that Paul Heyman's booked one match and then they're saying we're not doing that, so it again shows that they're not playing along with what TNA want to do, and they're going to continue to cause disruption and despair. Good heat and decent wrestling, happy with the performances there. And in the post-match, Austin Aries and Tyler Black stand tall, a display of the apparent unity within the New Age of Honor, showing immediate chemistry as partners. With all the other members at ringside during the match, the commentator is continually put over the threat that this alliance presents to TNA. Just imagine seeing all of them around the ring. You would know that it's not going to be easy for anybody in TNA. When Steve Corino leaves the announce position and Jimmy Jacobs also joins the victors in the ring, AJ Styles comes out from the back. Styles says that he's hearing a lot of talk about war, but from where he stands, he already has his hands on the spoils. He then raises the World Heavyweight Championship in the air, much to the anger of the former champion Austin Aries. He doesn't doubt that a war is coming though, but says that there is a locker room full of TNA guys ready to fight back. They seem to think that by coming together, they've made the most dominant force in TNA, but that locker room is ready to take on all challengers. He tells anybody ready to step up that he trusts them with his life, and they need to know that they can trust him with theirs. Coming out from the back, it looks like we have the first guy ready to step up in Samoa Joe. Joe stopped short of standing beside AJ Styles, however, with Carino warning that his trust may be misplaced. AJ is a little bit confused, but quickly gets his answer as Samoa Joe locks in the Kakina clutch, choking AJ Styles out and leaving him down on the stage. Coming from out of nowhere, a complete shock, especially considering that Joe was feuding with these Ring of Honor guys just a couple of months ago. What has changed in the mind of Samoa Joe to make him do what we're about to enact in the game, the heel turn of Samoa Joe? And with that major story developing, we return to the back to another huge storyline of the night. Bobby Lashley being interviewed by Jeremy Borash, and he vows to right the wrong of Slammiversary, saying that he is going to get the match he's owed at Victory Road instead. Lashley adds that Danielson's short stay at the top of the card is something that he can tell his grandchildren about in years to come, and he's sure that he'll dine out on a lucky fall over him for the rest of his career. Unfortunately, his time in a TNA ring comes to an end tonight. In fact, that fall might be what gets him the bookings back when he's on the independent scene. Bobby Lashley vows to finish the job he started earlier and plans to humiliate Bryan, beating him back to the bingo halls in tonight's main event. Lashley hopes that Kurt Angle is watching too, as he is next at Victory Road. So straight to the point, unfortunately losing heat to the storyline, but Lashley making very strong claims about what he's going to do to Bryan Danielson tonight. Maybe he's a little bit overconfident. We then get Alyssa Flash in that match we talked about earlier. She defeats April Hunter in 5 minutes and 8 seconds decisively with a Flash driver. Jazz at ringside unable to have any effect, and it's another poor match from the Knockouts, with them not being that over, and certainly the opponents not being that over. With Tara and with Alyssa Flash, they're not going to have good matches, but I think by dominating or having a decisive victory in this case, it will get them more momentum and hopefully help their overness, if not providing a good match on the card. Alyssa Flash has her arm raised in the ring following another decisive win, and the commentators put over that there can be no doubt that Mickie James will have been impressed with what she just saw. Maro and Taz then receive breaking news on this subject as they confirm the match has been made. Mickie James will make the first defense of her Knockouts Championship against Alyssa Flash next week on Impact. So like I said in the previous video, looking at the titles and the state of the company in general, I want title matches on TV to feel special. This is one where, for storyline reason, it made more sense to do this on TV. I think it's a big draw for next week's episode, the fact that we have one of our top titles on the line here. We then head to the back where the Beautiful People have entered the office of Paul Heyman, requesting that an episode of the Beautiful People show is added to next week's Impact. Mr. Anderson offers himself and Matt Morgan as special guests. He's sure that that's the ratings grabber that Paul Heyman's going to want, but they say they've already got it covered. Whispering into the ear of Paul Heyman, Velvet Sky surprises him with whatever he says, Angelina basically saying that they've got some secret that they've managed to find out about and they're ready to reveal it to the world. Convinced by Sky's words, Paul Heyman confirms that he will speak to this person first to check out that this is all legit, but he's happy to add the Beautiful People show to next week's schedule. The Beautiful People then leave very, very happy. Of course, it didn't take much for them to have Paul Heyman wrapped around their finger. We then talk before the main event. It's just extra promotion for this Saturday's TNA Evolve. They confirmed that the first appearance of the new World Tag Team Champions Jeff Hardy and Sting will take place on that show. So I thought I'd wait till this point to then tell viewers that they're not going to be on tonight, but you've got to tune in on Saturday to see them, as well as Desmond Wolf's first defense of the Evolve Championship. Awesome Kong, Magnus and the Motor City Machine Guns will all be in action also for the Slammiversary Fallout episode of TNA Evolve. But speaking of that fallout, the biggest bang heard from Bobby Lashley and Bryan Danielson in tonight's main event, and it is a 14 minutes and 41 match. Unfortunately they don't click, but it's still a good rating overall, 75. It just shows in their individual performances that these two don't really work well together. They do get the crowd buzzing, as I did set this to steal the show, but a decisive finish with Bryan Danielson taking a lot of punishment throughout the match. Of course, Bobby Lashley, even though he's on the way out, he does dominate large spells of this match, but that's all about showing the resilience and the toughness that Bryan Danielson has. Bobby Lashley, without question, I was going to say one of, but arguably the most legitimate guy in the company, especially given that he's got such a good MMA record at this point. But Bryan Danielson makes him tap out in the middle of the ring to the cattle mutilation. It says label lock there, but that's what I said at Slammiversary. I again want to show Bryan Danielson's array of moves that he has to offer. It's not just the label lock, he can make you tap out in a number of ways, and that's what he does tonight, making Bobby Lashley tap out to the cattle mutilation. Maybe not tapping out from the cattle mutilation, but a verbal quit or whatever it is. Bryan Danielson decisively beating Bobby Lashley is all you need to know. He then returns to his feet following the victory, and like Bryan Danielson tends to do after these big matches, remains in the zone, so focused, that furrowed brow. He's been through a war, but he is still standing. The commentators put over the brutality of that match that we'd just seen, and the resilience shown by American Dragon, especially considering he came into the match far from 100%, injured at the pay-per-view, further attacked in the opening segment, but still he could beat Bobby Lashley. That's the way it's going to go. If Lashley decides he's not re-signing and he's going to go to Pro Wrestling Noah, then he's not getting booked that well on the way out, and Bryan Danielson should gain massively from that, I hope. With Bryan Danielson standing tall with his arm raised in the ring, the focus is of course on him to end the show, but still the World Heavyweight Champion comes out from the back. He of course wants to take a closer look at his next opponent. He will face Bryan Danielson at Victory Road, but he does stay at the top of the stage, ensuring that the final shot that we get of Impact is Bryan Danielson, somebody who hopefully can get to that major star level soon enough. He's picked up a huge win, very happy with that, albeit fairly average rating, more or less what we'd expect from a middle of the road Impact. Obviously if we get into the 80s that's really good, but more than happy with increasing our popularity in 11 regions. Britain and Canada still something we need to look at, but the week's not over because we've promoted all those things for TNA Evolve, and we're going to go into that right now. And this episode begins with our attention being drawn to footage from post-Impact when Bobby Lashley, angry at his defeat, approached and punched Paul Heyman in the face. He has been suspended. There'll be an announcement further next week, and the idea we're putting over is that Bobby Lashley is in very, very serious trouble. Nobody else has laid their hands on the man in charge throughout this save, and you'd have to feel that is the final straw for Bobby Lashley. Jeff Hardy and Sting then come out and cut a promo as the new tag team champions. Jeff's childhood hero, Sting has gold again, and we let them improvise, say what they wanted. They've both done really well, and it's just about them accepting that the Kings will be coming back for the titles, but for now they're just taking in the moment, delighted to test themselves against some of the great teams in TNA. We then get Awesome Kong squashing a local talent, Lana Kinnear, pinning her with a sit-out powerbomb. It's actually a decent match, quite surprisingly. I'm assuming Kong has an attribute that means she's very good at squash matches, and we see that with a decent match overall. After the match, Madison Rayne comes out alone, no Amazon, although she does still refuse an invitation from Kong to join her in the ring. She puts over that Kong may have beaten her Amazon, but that means nothing. She's learned that if you want something doing, you have to do it yourself, and that's exactly what she intends to do. Jay Lethal is then approached in the back while preparing for tonight's main event by Maria, and she's telling him that tonight it's his last chance to show he can change. He wants to focus on the main event. He doesn't need any more drama right now, but clearly that is something that's going to play on his mind going into this main event. We then get Sweeney and the Young Bucks introducing Magnus to the ring, just putting over the fresh new face in Sweet and Sour. This is his first match as a part of the group, and he picks up a squash victory over Kiyoshi with a Michinoku Driver 2, or as he called it, the Mag Daddy Driver. It's a decent match, and this is only going to be good for finally getting some momentum for Magnus. He's been used very poorly throughout this save, but now, with a bit of direction as part of Sweet and Sour, we should see better things from him. As always, Larry Sweeney wants that photo op after the match, puts all four men together in the ring, and he wants the world to look at the new and improved Sweet and Sour. Before their match against the Motor City Machine Guns, Scott D'Amore puts over Team Canada. He wants to promote their chances in that match, but they are interrupted by Eric Young. He's frantic and he tells the interviewer SoCal Val that he's seen something amazing. He can't explain it, but they're going to have to come and see it. The cameras and SoCal Val follow him to a smoky room. Young gulps, hypes himself up, and says that he's going to go into the room and he's going to tell everybody what he finds inside. Before we can look into that though, we do have to go back to the ring as Team Canada perhaps slightly distracted by that strange scenario, are defeated by the Motor City Machine Guns. It's another short match, and we're using Evolve here to just give people who I want to give wins to solid, decisive wins to try and rebuild momentum in the case of the Motor City Machine Guns after they were defeated at Slammiversary, bouncing back quickly with a really good performance. And while we know what they can do in longer matches, I think their style does lend itself to just a quick, fast-paced match, 5 minutes in there, out there, do all their spots, and wow the fans essentially. We then have another recap of the events of Impact. This time the commentator's talking about the formation of the new Age of Honor. Has TNA changed forever? We're going to get the follow-up on Impact, but now we of course have to turn our attention to the TNA Evolve Championship match. It's a strong main event, and as Desmond Wolfe takes control of Jay Lethal, Maria comes out and she goes under the ring, takes a steel chair, throws it in, and she's offering Jay Lethal the chance to steal this victory essentially. She distracts the referee. Lethal picks the chair up but throws it down. He still has that belief in himself, even if nobody else does, that he can win this the fair way. He doesn't want to cheat to win. This does backfire, or maybe you can say that he stood by his morals and that's more important than a victory, but Desmond Wolfe wins with a Tower of London, a 77, really good from the Evolve champion, and we know now that if he keeps putting in them performances, we're very happy for him to continue to main event Evolve with this championship around his waist, getting the crowd buzzing, as I'm sure it would. And we are actually going to turn Maria heel with that, because of course she said this was the last chance that Jay Lethal was getting. She is furious after the match, but Desmond Wolfe shows respect to Jay Lethal for refusing to cheat and take the low road. The newly heel Maria begins to berate him from the outside. Wolfe goes to stand on the top turnbuckle. Lethal going to leave the ring, but then stops. He turns back, picks up the chair, and destroys Desmond Wolfe. Jay Lethal obviously thought that if he won fairly, Maria would be back on side, but after the match, he snaps basically, the straw that broke the camel's back, and Maria has a huge smirk on her face. This is what she's wanted to see from him this whole time, and because I forgot to put the turn into the angle, it's not actually going to happen, but I'm going to do it at the next possible opportunity. Jay Lethal finally turning heel, and we hope that with this we can finally get him some of that momentum that was lost back. A good show overall, happy with that. Despite it losing popularity in 9 regions, I'm still happy that it reaches the required level from an MTV show. And that's the end of the Fallout week to Slammiversary 9. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed those 2 shows. I think a lot of big stuff happened. The new Age of Honor coming together, Danielson cleanly defeating Lashley in a one-on-one, a huge turn for Samoa Joe, a turn for Jay Lethal and Maria. That's good to see, I like that. Kazuchika Okada, he's just returned from his excursion, he's now back with New Japan, so we'll definitely follow his progress throughout the rest of this save. The road to Bound for Glory beginning on the Build to Victory road. That's the next pay-per-view, and hopefully you'll want to join me for the next episode as we continue to build to that show. Bryan Danielson challenging Kurt Angle already confirmed. It's going to be another very, very strong card. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.